Hello and welcome to New Europe Studios on Place Jourdan. I am Dan Alexe. With us today, Mr. Paul Skehan. Do I pronounce it well?
Very well.
Director General of Spirits of Europe. Or is it Spirits Europe?
It's just Spirits Europe now.
It's a conglomerate, a network of wine producers, of spirits producers?
Only spirits.
Only spirits, no wine, no beer?
No wine, no beer, no cider, just very good whiskies, cognacs, vodka, gin.
And you're supposed to promote their interests and to lobby in the EU?
Indeed, indeed. That is, I mean, we fulfill a very similar function to many others in Brussels. So we try to act as a bridge between the industry and sector on one side and the institutions on the other.
And you are now in Brussels in the middle of very tough and dangerous, some say, negotiations with the United States in the framework of the transatlantic free trade agreement.
Yeah.
What are the dangers for you, for the producers of spirits?
Very few, in fact. If
few.
we, you know, in terms of the TTIP negotiations, it's a market.
Let's not use acronyms.
I beg your pardon. So the American trade discussions.
Yeah.
For
these
us,
are sometimes mysterious for the viewers.
Okay. For us, that's not a critical set of discussions, in the sense that we have pretty much free access into the American market. They have free access here.
You have already.
We do, with very tiny exceptions. And so for us, those negotiations offer a slightly different opportunity. They offer the opportunity to look at a standardization of, to try and harmonize some of the technical standards between the two continents. If that was achieved, it would be a very good outcome for us. But there aren't barriers or tariffs as such between the two countries.
And you are here today also to promote a study that uses
Eurostat figures. Yeah, we are.
For what period?
Well, we look at 2013, but we look at it in comparison to the previous year, and we look at it back over 10 years.
10 years.
And so what we're looking at are the export figures from Europe of spirits products to other parts of the world. And in fact, in that period of time, you see that spirits exports have doubled from 5 billion in 2003 to just over 10 billion in 2013. So it's an extraordinarily good set of figures at the same time that in Europe consumption is actually falling consistently over that
10
time.
billion.
10
billion euros.
It's the biggest agri-food export in value terms.
More than corn and other...
More than corn, more than wine, more than milk, dairy, meat, everything.
Where do we export mostly? United States?
United States is the biggest, and then Asia has come along hugely. So United States is about 33% of those 10 billion. So 3.3.
1/3.
Yeah, exactly 1/3, so about 3.3 billion. But if you look at where the growth has been, it's into Southeast Asia. So China, Singapore, Taiwan.
How about India?
India has grown actually over the last couple of years, but it's still very much hamstrung by the fact that there are huge tariffs going into India.
Protectionism.
Well, it is. I mean, it's a 150% tariff. That cuts out a lot of
because they protect their own production.
They protect their own. And you have huge Indian whiskey production there. In fact, it's the single biggest whiskey market in the world, and European imports to that market account for less than 1%, which is extraordinary in global terms, because the European spirits and whiskies and so on are very strong. To account for only 1% is ludicrous. And what's needed there, of course, is a new impetus to the free trade agreement.
Is this one of the reasons that the free trade agreement with India failed to advance recently?
I don't think so. It was certainly one of the items that was on the table for discussion. So wines and spirits are typically for Europe an offensive interest. We're very strong in these sectors. But there would have been so many other issues on the table in terms of what the Indian Parliament itself had to pass through Parliament before they actually went to the elections. And that just didn't happen in time. And so now we're into a whole new era. We have Mr. Modi coming in on a very strong mandate, and what we hope is he uses that mandate also to reopen and then conclude these trade agreements.
So what would the agreement bring for you?
Well, if there was any decrease in that 150% down to zero, it would open up a market that would absolutely inject a massive amount of investment into the European production of spirits.
Hundreds of millions of drinkers.
Well, hundreds of millions of euros of investment would go into Speyside and into Irish and into cognac whiskies, into the cognacs, because that's where the market would be. It's such a huge market that has been untapped up until now.
And the agreement with the United States, what would it bring?
I think that brings more the possibility of a recognition on both sides of the Atlantic that certain standards and technical details are common. And then if those details were taken by other parts of the world as a standard, as a kind of harmonized set of standards, that would be an excellent outcome there as well. But we don't have the same bigger issues in the US that we have with India.
And when you say that consumption is lower today in Europe, is it also because of all the campaign against alcohol, like against cigarettes, smoking?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think people are more health conscious. When you look at the figures, Europeans drink more per capita than any other part of the world. So we're coming from a very high base. And I think it's a natural thing that over time that decreases down a certain amount. That's what's happening over the last 20, 30 years.
And how about Russia?
Russia is also a very interesting market for us. We export well to Russia. You have over 10 years about a 700% growth to that market. But it's also a market that is difficult to predict. You have a lot of regulatory, technical barriers that are introduced and then at very short notice or dropped on you. It's a very difficult market.
And how can you convince them to drink something else than their local cheap stuff?
Well, their consumers seem very happy to consume our products when we can get them in. Well, and in fact, that's, I mean, if you look at where the growth has come from over the 10 years, it's in these burgeoning middle classes in lots of the BRICS countries, so Brazil, Russia, India, China. If you look at the growth in their middle classes, they're really interested in now having kind of aspirational products, having European spirits on their table, and that's what's driven a lot of the growth.
There's been a failed initiative in the European Parliament a couple of years ago. Some MEPs who wanted labels on alcohol bottles to have pictures of livers with cirrhosis, like the ones that you have on cigarette packs.
Yeah.
Can we say that the alcohol lobby is more powerful than the tobacco lobby?
No, I think you can say that alcohol as a product is totally different from tobacco as a product. I think that's probably more true to the case. I mean, what you see is if you drink too much, you'll have trouble, you'll have problems, and those around you will have problems. But if you drink in moderation, or if you drink a small amount, in fact, there are certain benefits that accrue to you in terms of less heart disease and so on. So there are, I think, and the WHO also sees this, we are not in any way perceived the same as tobacco. And I think that set of thinking also flows through into European politicians. When they consider alcohol, they consider it as something that inherently is not bad. It's how much you drink, and the behavior as you drink it is very important. And then what you see around Europe are very, very different behaviors, leading to a whole different set of results in terms of harm. And so in the southern kind of Mediterranean countries, you see per capita people drink more, but the harms that are caused are frequently much less than in countries that have less per capita.
There's the diet as well.
But they binge drink, or they drink in a short
the culture
period of time.
and also
it's all of that. So it's a much different thing from tobacco. It really is a significantly different set of products, and it's perceived as such by politicians.
So basically Europe should encourage your industry.
Well, I think it should encourage it certainly to export, and it should encourage it within Europe to promote products in a very responsible way. And I think really on us, the onus is to make sure that we do that. So the industry has a big role to play here. We can't push people to drink more and more if that results in irresponsible consumption. And the industry is very aware of that. But is it right to advertise and promote our products and try and take drinkers away from beer or wine? Well, yes, we'll do it for sure.
But you could also push them to drink local stuff instead of imported stuff. Like people who drink American whiskey instead of better Scottish or
We
Irish.
could, Dan, but honestly, free trade is so much in our favour that we wouldn't go that way. For us, it's much better if markets are truly open. And if you look at from the US, from Russia, from all these markets, they have absolutely free, tariff-free access into Europe. And we welcome that. That's good competition, it's good for the European consumer. But honestly, we're so strong as a sector, and so much of these products are based in Europe and can never be moved. So it's very unlike beer, for instance. If you produce Scotch, you can only produce it in Scotland. If you produce cognac, it can only be produced in cognac. And so these are sectors, these are drinks which are absolutely rooted in Europe and can never be delocalized.
Like champagne and like
champagne,
some
all of
Belgian
these
beers.
Exactly, they have to be produced in Europe. And then if we can export them and make the money for Europe, then all the better. Of the 10 billion that we exported last year, only about 1.4 billion of spirits was imported into Europe. So you imagine the bourbons, Tennessee whiskies, Russian vodka. So the net gain per year to Europe is about 8.6 billion euros. that we create in wealth. And I think in the current circumstances and with the need for growth and jobs, the need for investment, that's not a bad return.
And you're made up of national associations and corporate?
We have both national associations and in fact we have category associations. So national associations, for instance, in Germany, BSI is a very strong association that represents all of the spirits sector in Germany. Whereas in, for instance, the UK, we have the Wine and Spirits Trade Association based in London, but we also have the Scotch Whisky Association based in Edinburgh. In France, we have a French federation, but we also have a cognac federation. So depending on the strength of the category, we sometimes have double memberships. And yeah, then we do also have corporate members.
Does it happen for you to refuse demands for membership?
The demands for membership have to go through the rest of our membership. And so provided they don't object, it goes through. And in my short 2.5 years there, no one has been rejected so far.
So all in all, it's a sector that will never fail or doesn't fear the crisis?
Well, it's not that it doesn't fear the crisis. I think if you look at the figures for last year, in fact, they're pretty static. We had huge growth in exports between 2011 to 2012. It jumped by about 20%. And that was because the Chinese, the Indian, the Brazils were booming. And what you had then in 2013 was a bit of a slowdown in that. Also partially, you may have heard in China, there was a government decision to restrict gift giving and to restrict government
like here in the Commission,
administrative receptions and so on. That really took a lot of the gas out of the luxury end of the market, and a lot of our products suffered in that regard. So if you look at the Chinese market last year, it's down about 22% on what it was the previous year. So it's not that we're immune, and in fact I suspect our sector is really, really tightly tied to the overall economy. If the economies in these countries booms, our sector will do very well.
But also will the counterfeit
Absolutely.
products?
It's a huge, huge problem for us.
How,
not just outside.
How do we fight that?
With great difficulty, and I think there we need a slightly more joined up approach within Europe, but also outside. I don't think that the scale and scope of that problem is accepted widely enough, and I don't see that there is a kind of a holistic political thinking about how to address it. I think in some countries it's almost accepted as part of the kind of cultural backdrop. But one, it costs the industry heavily, it costs national exchequers who aren't taking in any revenue, and then sadly in some cases, as in the Czech Republic a year and a half ago, you also see deaths. And so, you know, it's a serious problem, and within Europe, but also outside.
Yeah. Paul Skehan, thank you for coming.
Dan, thank you very much.
I am Dan Alexe. We had with us today Mr. Paul Skehan, who is Director General of SpiritisEUROPE, a network of spirits producers and lobbyists for the European Union. Thank you.